Hello there, my name is Tim Walter. I'm a house healer and alternative life coach, and welcome to this week's edition of Monday Moments. This is the programme in which I tend to answer your questions and respond to some of the comments that you've left from the videos that I usually upload at the end of the week. So this week what I want to do is to quickly go through the content of the interview that Hamish did for us, or rather the interview that I uploaded last week featuring Hamish. Hamish Miller was my mentor of some years. He unfortunately passed away in 2010, so he's no longer with us. But what I want to do is to quickly show you part of the video, and I just want to enlarge upon what Hamish was saying so that those of you that are new to earth energy and the concepts that we're talking about can hopefully understand a little bit more.
To me, the earth energy system is its nervous and meridian system, same as ours, much more complex. It's a cobweb of energy lines all over the surface and under and above the earth. We are cosmically connected to everything else in the universe.
So the first aspect that Hamish was talking about was liking the earth energy system to the energy meridians in a body in a human being. Now, when we go to an acupuncturist, the acupuncturist will work on specific energy points within the energy meridians, and he will place those needles in those points. Some people refer to standing stones as needles of stone. In fact, there's a great book some years ago written by Tom Graves called Needles of Stone. And this was about the concept of huge menhirs acting as acupuncture needles of stone into the Earth's energy system. So this kind of analogy between the Earth energy system and the human energy system is kind of stuck. You can also think about it as being like the blood supply as well, because we've got huge veins and arteries carrying blood and oxygen and all that we need to survive to various parts of the body. But also we've got it goes down from those huge arteries and right down to the small tiny fields of capillaries. And just as there are these small tiny fields of capillaries everywhere carrying oxygen and the vital things to the physical body, earth energy goes from the massive channels of energy flow that are really feeding sort of cosmic information around the place down to tiny, tiny little tributaries. And what Hamish says here is that everything, every plant, flower, person, living being is connected with a little filament of earth energy. Now, of course, this is where I get on my hobby horse and say, well, the label is insufficient because we use this term earth energy to cover so many different things within this subtle realm aspect of the non-physical. But for the time being, earth energy is we've got what is the label that we're using, so let's stick to it. And the big thing to take away from this point of Hamish's is that you can get massive channels of earth energy and you can get just tiny little filaments. In this first section, Hamish also mentions Archangel Michael. Now, I believe even in the Islamic religion, in the Quran, Archangel Michael is actually known as Archangel Michael. I believe that's the case. I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong. So Archangel Michael being one of the major archangels of the Christian tradition, he is a warrior archangel, if you like. He is usually seen with a sword. He is a protector. And frequently, if anybody is calling upon protection, then they call upon Archangel Michael. He's very much involved with the earth, I guess, in that respect. And so when Hamish found the earth energy lines that weaved across southern England, that we'll talk about again shortly, he named them Michael and Mary lines. So Michael being a very male-feeling energy flow, Mary obviously being a female energy flow. What they found was that the male energy flow would tend to have sacred sites on promontories, on places that were high up, and Mary would be more subdued. Well, I don't mean subdued, but more well, a more delicate energy, shall we say. I don't mean that in any disrespect whatsoever.
I mean, the Chinese have known about, been working for 4,000 years on earth energy, and we call it Feng Shui. I'm not sure whether the practice of Feng Shui transfers very well between cultures, because there is a deep understanding of earth energy and all its subtle related spiritual and emotional changes that it can be involved. And I think when it transfers to this country, it tends to be totally simplified.
We're talking here about Feng Shui and about the fact that Feng Shui kind of developed out of an understanding and wisdom and knowledge of earth energy flows. And certainly the ancients in China developed a massively powerful system of working with the energy of the land, the energy of the air and the water and fire with Feng Shui. Now, what Hamish is saying is he's not in any way demeaning Feng Shui at all, but what he's saying is that he personally felt that bringing the concepts of Feng Shui across to the West, where there was less of an ingrained understanding within the society about energy flows, that perhaps it wasn't as so effective over here as it was in China and the East. And as HH11 pointed out on the comment section, there's also been a similar understanding of earth energy from eons ago in the Vedic system of medicine and the way of understanding the world around us. So the Indian nation, the ancient Indian nation, was heavily into earth energy and understanding the way that it flowed and affected all beings. So Hamish in this section also touches upon his experience in Australia and his encounter with a ranger out in Australia. And what he's really talking about there is the fact that that ranger understood that some of the Aboriginal elders had a knowledge of earth energy and energy flows in the landscape and subtle energy that the ranger as a Westerner really didn't stand a hope of actually understanding and coming to terms with. Now, the best way to learn a little bit more about this sort of aspect is to Google maybe Aboriginal Dreamtime or song lines. These are both interesting things. But look, if you can and if you want to, at these particular aspects, because like all indigenous cultures, the Aboriginal peoples in Australia had spent many thousands of years working with the natural energies of the land, and that's really what earth energy is, and that's really what we're trying to do when we douse earth energy centres and in our houses and in our homes and in the places that we live and work. We're trying to realign ourselves with the natural energy flows for our optimum wellness and efficiency, if you like. Because not only does it affect physiology, but also, of course, state of mind.
Now, we had an astonishing experience in New Zealand where I had doused one of the maraes, the really sacred site in South Island. And while we were there, we sort of moved in and out of a party which included a Maori girl called Donna, who had been taken from her family very early, about 4 years old, because they recognised that she had the potential to have the knowledge of energy.
Now, this is quite interesting, really, because this is there are two things about this section that I want to highlight. And one is that it's actually how it reflects on the nature of Hamish himself as an individual. Hamish, despite his amazing wisdom and knowledge, always felt that he liked to have confirmation from others, from other things around, that actually what he was dealing with was there and it was what he thought it was. He was often frustrated by the fact that he felt so dense about why, just did not understanding about what the spirit and the management were trying to show him when working with earth energy. And this little story about him encountering this Maori lady going through ceremony at the Earth Energy Power Centre is an illustration of how humble Hamish was, in terms of he looks at this in terms of verification and vindication that his dowsing was accurate and correct. Now, what the story is about Hamish having gone to this sacred site. This would have been at Castle Hill, actually, in New Zealand, which is a very sacred site belonging to the ancient Wataha people who were there, we believe, before the Maoris, although there is some contention about that. But we believe that this was a Wataha spiritual learning university, if you like. Hamish talks about various steps going up the side of the hill, and what he was talking about there was that there were different stations that each student would attain and would learn new knowledge as they went up to the next station. And the power centre, the Earth Energy Power Centre that he talks about in this little story, where he encounters this lady, was at the top. It was the top station, if you like. Now, what he's basically saying is that he doused an energy centre, and he doused the spiral and a manifestation, as he calls it. If you remember, he talks about a 9-petaled, gloriously symmetrical manifestation. Now, when he talks about manifestation, it's again, we get a little bit crossed over with our labels here, because Hamish is using the term specifically to describe a shape that can be doused in the earth energy. And frequently these are organic but geometric shapes. So he's talking here about a 9-petaled, geometrically symmetrical shape. And these, we use the term a manifestation. It is a manifestation. The reason that he used the term manifestation is because it is created between the earth and the human being. So what Hamish was saying was that this interaction by the Maori lady effectively encouraged this 9-petaled manifestation to appear. Now, I haven't talked about manifestations in this sense, earth energy manifestations, on the channel before, but it is something I will go into. And as more and more of you actually get into dowsing and actually find your power centres in your home, I will start to talk a little bit more about these geometric shapes and if you like, the amazing emotional connection that gives you when you find them. They're on a slightly different frequency to the power centre itself. So we'll talk more about that in due course as this year goes on. So that's what Hamish is talking about with this story. He's also saying, again for vindication if you like, that the manifestation that appeared, this 9-petaled shape, was 14 feet across, so it's a substantial thing. And it takes a while to douse something like that. You follow it through, and Hamish was really, really pleased that he'd marked the start where he started, and he ended up in exactly the same place. So again, it's a sort of self-validating exercise, that. But again, as a dowser, and the more that you douse and get used to this sort of stuff, then the more you'll find that equally each time this happens, it's really nice to have that verification that things are working properly.
I think what happened was that the ancients were very, very closely tuned to the earth and its energies. And they would travel to a place where they felt good.
Hamish continues to talk a little bit more about his theory about what came first. Did a sacred site come first? Was it there? Did people find it? Or did a sacred site develop because people were there? And it's something that we'll never really know the answer to, for sure. But what Hamish always reckoned was that, and as he describes here, you had nomadic people in the, thousands of years ago. Everybody was nomadic before they became settled with agriculture. And they would find some places that obviously were providing water, say, for example, where they would stop for a while. They would stop in places that were not only going to give them shelter, but also were going to make them feel good. And some of these places probably kind of had already little energy centres pulsing away. It might have been a mixture of water and, as he says, a piezoelectric effect, which is an electrical field created by pressure. Quite often in granite, you can get a piezoelectric field developed from that, to the weight of stone on stone, or the movement within the earth. So what Hamish reckons is that the tribal people would have travelled to a place, they would have stopped at a place, and because they were so in tune with the earth, they would conduct ceremony there anyway. And as we've seen from the previous story about the Poonamoo stone in New Zealand with the lady that created this amazing manifestation, equally these places that the wandering tribes stopped at, the more they celebrated in ceremony, then the more the earth reacted and responded, and the stronger the energy field of that interaction would have been at those places. So once the people, the tribe moved on, if they came back again at the same time next year, for example, then that energy, they would be building upon the energy that was remaining from the previous year. So it's a self kind of perpetuating energy building process. So again, this is why it's important for health and wellness that we meditate in the same place in the house, because that is building up our relationship with the earth energy in that space. And the more we do it, then the stronger the positive enhancements are of that earth energy where we're meditating.
Leylines are perfectly valid. They are technically they are straight alignments of more than 3 sacred sites.
Ley lines, we always have this contradiction between ley lines and earth energy lines. Which is which? Well, the big, I've got other videos in the channel talking about the differences between ley lines and earth energy lines. Fundamentally, again, Hamish repeats here, ley lines are straight alignments. And what Hamish loved about these straight alignments was that he could pretty well guarantee that where you've got a straight alignment of sacred sites, such as the one that he mentions, the Michael alignment, which was made famous by John Michel, where you get these straight alignments, these ley lines, you can plot them on a map. You will usually find weaving energy lines of earth energy that go around and pick out the absolute spot on centres of the sacred sites. I don't mean that sort of geometrically spot on. I mean, whereas the ley line might just kind of touch on the edge of a sacred site, the energy flow, the earth energy flow, will whap straight through it, okay? You'll find that if you get out into the landscape and do the dowsing.
Because the energy lines are made up from a number of different frequencies, it very often happens that one of the frequencies, whoever it is doesn't resonate with that frequency, and they feel slightly uncomfortable.
And finally, earth energy healing. The last section that Hamish is talking about there is he's talking about when he's doing earth energy healing in people's houses. Earth energy lines are made up of bands of different frequencies, and some of those frequencies will affect individuals differently. So if you've got a family of 4, for example, living in a house, it may just be the mother that is affected by one of those frequencies in the energy line that makes her feel out of sorts. And it can be that, as he says, is enough to stop her going into one particular room in the house. So we can find that only one person, for example, in a family is affected by detrimental earth energy, and the others aren't. And this is, in doing the healing, we have to ask the management to adjust it so that nobody in the family is affected, and that's how it works. So, as Hamish says, the management can adjust the energy frequencies along the entire line so that nothing finds them detrimental. Maybe they'll change as they go through, we don't know. We can't do that, it's all done by the management. So that's it then, really, and hopefully that's made some sense. That's brought some clarity to what Hamish was talking about. If it's still not clear, obviously leave a question, leave a comment, and hopefully this has been enjoyable for you as well. So later in the week I'll upload another one and we'll go from there. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about manifestations. Take care. Bye-bye.